Andrew, welcome. Tell us a little bit about that background in South Africa. What is actually happening economically right now today? Why is there seems to be a bit of mayhem at the moment?
So I think the three sort of bubbles that I would say that we should be focusing on to understand what's pushed the rand so far back in the last 4 or 5 years is firstly commodities. South Africa is primarily a commodity economy, and we rely heavily on the export of commodities to attract foreign capital and foreign exchange. So our foreign exchange reserves are affected by selling commodities, and as we know, China slowed down, the rest of the world slowed down, so the demand for commodities has dropped. The other one is emerging markets. The world is full of risk at the moment. I don't think anybody really knows what the long-term effects are going to be of all the quantitative easing and all the post-global financial crisis measures that were put in place. So the world's uncertain at the moment. So the minute there are any jitters, everybody runs for the US dollar or the euro to a lesser extent, pound, Swiss franc, but they'll run out of countries like South Africa, which is in that respect is seen as an emerging market. So we've got a very, very established foreign exchange business. We've been going for 20 years, mainly sending money into South Africa, but we're a global company. We only started sending money out of South Africa in 2011. And just to give you an idea, in December and January, so December 2015, Jan 2016, we saw record outflows, and at the worst possible rate.
Let's talk about the future of currency. I mean, there's talk of digital currency, bitcoins, blockchain, which is the ledger which drives all digital currency. What are your views on that?
I think we're in a world of disruptive technology at the moment. The US dollar is currently the world reserve currency. There's talk about the renminbi or the Chinese yuan becoming a reserve currency. I think that's obviously quite a threat to...
What about the BRICS Bank? Is that sort of impact? Could that impact on it?
I'm not too confident that the BRICS Bank will have any real influence globally at this stage, because I think China seems to be slowing down. They're still growing, but their insatiable demand for commodities seems to have slowed down. So things are slowing down in China. If you look at Brazil and Russia,
yes,
they've just both been downgraded to junk status, investment status. South Africa is also looking pretty much on the edge of a cliff. So the BRICS Bank doesn't give me any... I don't think that's a great threat to any of the bigger currency environments. I think the Chinese currency on its own has now just been included in the international sort of basket. And the reality is the Chinese are a massive economy, and they're a big player in the global space now. But there is the Bitcoin question.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about Bitcoin, and I have done a lot of research into Bitcoin, like all of these things, there's no real value lying behind the actual Bitcoin. But as long as it becomes a liquid and tradable commodity, then it becomes a means of exchange. Whether you invest in it as a store of value, I don't know, because it's been very volatile. But the volatility in Bitcoin has really been because of the lack of liquidity in the Bitcoin market. Simplistically, if you look at Bitcoin, so using Bitcoin purely as a system on which to transact, or a protocol to transact, as opposed to the conventional banking system, what we could do is we could sell rands, buy Bitcoin, instantaneously sell those Bitcoins, and then purchase sterling.
Yes.
So what happens is you don't have any real exposure to Bitcoin pricing, because it's an instantaneous buy-sell. But what is interesting about it is the platform, and you mentioned the blockchain technology. It's an open platform, it's not a centrally controlled environment, but the blockchain technology allows tracking of every single transaction, and you can't go in and delete and hide transactions. So it's a very transparent system. So every transaction that happens is recorded. So in a way, that's great. But I mean, think about it. If you're a central treasury like the Fed, and you're controlling the world financial system, are you going to be positive about the adoption of Bitcoin?
Sure.
So we've seen a lot of negative press around Bitcoin. It's been used for money laundering and drug dealers and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, as a system over which to transact, I think it could be a very feasible one. I don't think it's going to go away.
Of course, investors out there will be looking at you and they'll be looking at me and they say, well, what is your advice for an investor out there? How can you get the right information? Because everybody has an opinion. There's a lot of opinions out there. We have to kind of separate between opinion and fact.
There's a lot of doom-mongers around at the moment, because the minute there's volatility, people will jump on the bandwagon. They will quote statements seen in the press out of context, and they get a bit of fear going, and they will shepherd people into investing through them.
Sure.
What I would say is, speak to your local advisor, somebody that you know and trust in South Africa, if this is where you're based.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have got offshore as part of your investment strategy, and you know, every investor has a different strategy, and you know, different stage of life depending on what the demands are on what they need to be spending a month. If you've got kids at school, you might not be able to invest so much,
yes,
etc., etc. But
yeah,
offshore certainly has to be part of it. The one thing that I would caution is that offshore is very, very expensive at the moment because the rand's so undervalued. I know that everybody's bolting and they want to just get their money out just in case, but I would make sure that somebody here is looking after you and that they're dealing with somebody reputable on the other side. Ask the question, how many locals are investing in that product?
sure.
So if you're going to go and buy into a building in central Manchester, ask that developer the question, how many local Manchester business people have invested there, or how many local English investors are there? If this is mainly Chinese investors or Russians or Brazilians, I would just be really careful, because there are a lot of those type of environments where people are dumping money into the UK. They're not interested in the investment credentials. All they're looking for is a place to park their money, and it's often questionably acquired money. So I would just be really careful.